Welcome to the QCA Wrestle Podcast with Rob Hill and Jay Zyman. Our guest today is Colton Feller. Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show. We're here today with Maquoketa head wrestling coach Colton Feller. Colton, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
We are too. We appreciate it, man. I've said this a couple times now, and hopefully it's becoming true. I heard today that the governor said everything can kind of really start opening up again. I heard even pools can start opening. So hopefully we're about done with this craziness, but wanted to ask you, how have you been spending your time with this crazy time, this crazy COVID stuff going on?
Yeah, it has been crazy. And I think back to when this was all kind of first starting to happen for us, it was like parent-teacher conferences. And right about that time every year, I kind of take a little vacation just to give myself a break after football and wrestling. And each day I was on my vacation, it was like, well, what's going to happen next? Am I going to be able to get back home? What's that going to look like? It's been kind of surreal. I don't think 3-4 months ago any of us imagined it was going to turn out like this. I've just been reading a lot. Still try to work out pretty regularly, try to stay in contact with the kids. I haven't tried to nag them. I know, especially our kids for sure, dealing with enough stuff at home that for me to put any kind of extra pressure on them, I just feel like that's unfair. But yeah, just, try to stay learning. I know there's like a million Carrie Colette videos out there. I'm just trying to take down those one at a time, learn them as much as I can without having access to the mat. But yeah, just, trying to fill the time, continue to learn.
Yeah. Have one question Jay likes to ask, and I actually looked at our plans, and we're not going to ask you this, so I'm going to now. Have you watched Tiger King yet? Have you gotten that board yet?
That was like one of the first things we did when I knew that I wasn't going to have anything to do. I was like, all right, let's do it. Yeah. I didn't binge watch it like all in one night, like I'm sure some people did, but I have to admit it. I got hooked probably by like the second episode. And at that point, you just feel obligated to finish it.
Yeah, you almost had to, I think, by then. I started a third rotation through when I finally quit. I'm like, you know what? I already know what's going to happen. I might as well just stop.
Yeah, I didn't do that many rotations. I just did one, and I felt trashy enough doing that. So I was like, yeah, one's enough.
Yeah.
So did she kill her husband?
I believe so.
And in recent news, she got Joe Exotic's zoo. Did you guys see that?
I did see that. I was kind of sad, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So where were you at on vacation when you heard the news?
For probably the last, 5 years or so, maybe longer, I've been going to Jamaica. My parents go there. They've been going to the same spot for probably the last 15. And, I kind of go down there really to just do absolutely nothing because I figure I'm pretty much go from, the beginning of the summer through the end of wrestling. And it's kind of the first chance I get to wind down a little bit.
That's nice. Nice place to go. So
yeah, it is. Although I'll tell you, the sun is hotter by the equator. I've learned that the hard way, unfortunately, more times than I should.
Yeah.
We're in a similar situation as you. We were down in Mexico on vacation and made it back into the States with like 8 hours to spare before they closed the borders. So, yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah, it was. Well, and it was kind of nice because the airports were kind of emptied out, so whereas you were maybe kind of worried about like, oh my gosh, am I going to encounter somebody that has it? Airports were pretty well emptied out by that point. So it wasn't really a big concern.
Yep. So, all right, I'm going to get us back on track here. My bad here. All right, so what got you started in wrestling? How'd you get started, and where are you originally from?
Well, do you want the long story or the short story?
I'll take either one.
Well, I'll start with the long one. If we feel like we're getting a little long-winded, you can pull me back in. But I'd say probably my journey with wrestling has been kind of an interesting one. Especially as I kind of reflect back on it now with being a head coach. Big wrestling family, obviously. I grew up in Maquoketa. related to the Papes. So if you've ever heard of like Cole, Dane, Adam, Eric Pape, big wrestling family. But I really had no interest in wrestling growing up. Probably the first time I remember even going to a practice was like maybe in third grade. At that point in time, I'll just say I was overweight, which is me, being nice to myself when I was chubby. Went to one practice and I did not like it. Wasn't fun. Actually played AAU basketball from like third grade up until my senior year of high school. And I had some interactions with wrestling kind of in between that time in middle school. And I think this is one of the best things. I love that the state of Iowa offsets basketball and wrestling for middle school kids because I love that they can do both. My mom was like, there's this guy, maybe you've heard of him, Coach Tampier. He's the middle school wrestling coach. He had quite a bit of success at the high school level. I think you should just give wrestling a shot. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll do it. It's only 6 or 8 weeks, whatever it is. And I had a pretty good 7th grade season. And, I was like, well, maybe I'll do a couple AAU tournaments. Those did not go very well. And I think I maybe got 3rd or 4th at every single one of them. But then the next year, I kind of looked forward to wrestling. And I kind of looked at it like, well, if I'm going to do AAU again, I better jump into this thing with both feet. And so I had some friends from Makoka that were always carpooling to Young Guns practices and started going to those. And, wrestling really grew on me. I think the appeal is still the same appeal it has to me today, where it's you kind of control your own destiny. But made it to AAU state. And for some reason, when I got to high school, I thought it'd be a good idea to play basketball instead of wrestle. But then junior year, I got really tired of basketball. I think, that same thing, like just feeling like I didn't have as much control over the outcome as I wanted. And so I went out for wrestling my senior year, and that was probably one of the biggest regrets I had, honestly, with high school, was not pursuing wrestling all 4 years, because I really think it would have made a big difference. But that's kind of how I got my start with wrestling. And in terms of coaching, I never really planned on coaching wrestling. I think that's probably one of the craziest things about being a head coach now. When I came back after I graduated, I was going to sub, and I was for sure going to coach football. And the AD at the time was like, hey, what do you think about being a wrestling coach? And I was like, I wasn't really planning on it. They actually offered me head coach at that point, but I was like, it would be a disservice to the kids if I was head coach. Like I'm fresh out of college, don't really have a ton of experience. And then ended up being assistant coach, and that kind of started the journey that I'm on now.
That's a pretty crazy story, Colton. I don't know too many head coaches who played high school basketball. That's that's a unique thing. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, well, and I kind of try to use that to my advantage, because I know, we've all seen the basketball players that should be wrestlers, and I try to use that as leverage. Like, hey, I was you at one point. I can tell you, you don't want to wait till it's too long or too far gone. Hey, let's get you out for wrestling. And it hasn't been super successful, but it is nice to have that in my back pocket. I always feel like if nothing else, I can relate to kids a little better. So
sure. Someone will listen to it. At some point, somebody will. I know. So when I was in high school, there was a kid. His name's Terry Vici. Some people listening probably know the name. It's from back in the early 2000s, though, at Davenport Assumption. His freshman year was cut from the basketball team. He grew up thinking, and Terry, I apologize if I say this wrong, but I think he thought he was Michael Jordan. He was gonna be this next, a basketball star. Got cut as a freshman. Was like a big, a football player. He's like, well, crap, I got to do something. He came out to wrestle, made it to state that year, and was a state champion the next year. So if you get cut from the basketball team, guys, listen, there's another opportunity for you, and it's in the wrestling room. It's where you go to get tougher. So.
Well, and I do think wrestling is kind of evolving in terms of like the kids that we're targeting. At least me growing up, when I thought about wrestling, I thought like just gritty, hard-nosed kids. And I don't think you're ever going to lose those kids, because that's just the nature of wrestling. But wrestling is becoming so much more of an athleticism battle. I even think about like a Jordan Burroughs. Like what sets him apart is he's just explosive like nobody else, and so I think you're seeing that a lot more on the mat. Like you're seeing kids that are doing things that you just didn't see before. And that's kind of a big part of getting kids that are a little more athletic on the mat.
Yeah. Jaden Cox is another one. I mean, it's like the Matrix out there. The stuff he does, it looks like it shouldn't be possible. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I was not one of those guys when I stepped on the mat. I was still kind of a grinder of a guy, but it's crazy to see how the sport's changed. Even the last 5 years or so, I feel like the techniques you're seeing on the mat, it's a totally different sport. It seems like.
Yeah, I totally agree. Who were some of the wrestlers that you kind of looked up to, maybe as role models when you were a young wrestler?
I think my family's probably always been the role models for me. I really didn't pay a ton of attention to like Iowa wrestling growing up. I think probably my first exposure to Iowa wrestling was when my cousins Cole and Dane wrestled there. And even then, I don't think I realized like how cool of an accomplishment that was. Yeah. But I would say them, in terms of like influencing my style. I have a cousin that worked with me pretty closely when I was a senior, Adam Pape, and he was a 2-time state qualifier for Makoka. I'd say, and just trying to look at, okay, here's maybe physically or athletically, here's what I have to offer. How can we find some technique that you can use that complements that? So I'd say, probably those three would be the biggest ones.
Coach, so you graduated from Maquoketa, went on to Grinnell, got your master's, ended up becoming a specialist in strength and conditioning, as well as setting yourself up to come back and teach. But my kids are like, oh, once we're done with the small town living, we're not coming back. What brought you back to Maquoketa? I mean, it's a beautiful little town, but what brought you back into the town and saying, hey, I want to start building this up?
I think it was probably a couple things. I don't know that I ever necessarily like planned on coming back, but at the same time, I don't think I ever really planned on leaving. Maquoketa maybe has a bad perception depending on where you come from, but I know that there are a lot of great people that are in Maquoketa. There's a lot of things that the town has to offer. And I guess for me personally, I kind of look at it like from a problem solving perspective. Like, I feel like I have some things to offer. Why not bring that back to my hometown and, try to be part of making the community as good as I know it's capable of being.
Great answer. That's pretty cool. So I guess it kind of ties into that last question, but you had a little bit of a unique situation. So Maquoketa, back in and probably before this, but I know in the 90s was a pretty good program with, you mentioned the Papes. I know Eric Juergens, Coach Dan Peer, pretty good tradition there. And then it kind of fell off a little bit. I would say Jay put it as basically you've helped rise this program back from the ashes a little bit. Once was a powerhouse, and now you're building it again. What have you done? How have you gone about that process?
Yeah, no, when I think about like when I was young, I think, it was probably like the tail end or maybe even the middle of when Maquoketa was in its prime. I can still remember like when Cole was in the state finals turning on Iowa Public Television and, watching the Grand March and just kind of being amazed at all that stuff. And to me, Maquoketa was right up there with some of those other schools like Osage. You knew that there was going to be a guy from Maquoketa probably in the finals or for sure on the podium every year. And I really don't know what happened. I think in little towns, it's one of those things where it kind of ebbs and flows. Sports experience some success and, that kind of helps build some success, and then they fall off and kids maybe lose interest. I don't really know what it was, but I definitely can't take all the credit for, where Maquoketa is at right now. We've been pretty lucky between myself, Paul Cobe, who's an assistant, was former head coach, and even Brendan Schott, who's now head coach at North Lynn. I just think we've had some really great people involved with the program, people who really love the sport, and probably even more importantly than that, like they really want to have an impact on the kids. I think Doc and I, maybe it's where we took over when, you only have 6 or 8 kids. You really can't make it about winning, because if that's how you're going to measure success, you're probably not going to be very successful. But, we wanted to kind of take the perspective, like, let's give these kids some skills and some tools that they can use long after they're off the mat. And let's try to give them some kind of experience that they're going to look back on fondly. And I think, in having those as kind of our goals, or, as that being kind of our mission as a program, I think we've attracted kids to come out, and that's allowed us to kind of build it to where it is now.
And for those of you who have never wrestled or seen Makoketa's gym, it is so fun to watch a basketball game, whatever, within the pit that they have there. I guess take North Scott's pit, and this is a modern day version of it with a lot more better amenities. So beautiful place to watch the match.
Yeah, and I one of the things I remember, I don't have a ton of wrestling memories from when I was little, but it must have been one of those like double duels. It was like Iowa, Loris, and maybe Co. And that was in Makoketa's old gym. And I just remember that sucker being, full house. I'd love to see something like that happen again in our new gym. I just, it's such a cool environment. I think it'd be awesome to have something like that happen again. So maybe in the future we can set something like that up, but one of my dreams, I guess.
I love it. That'd be so cool. I'd be one of the first ones getting tickets. So, Coach, we talked a little bit earlier, unusual situation this year, right? So how are you keeping your guys motivated? What are you having them do during this off season? Since, I know a lot of your boys would come down at Millennium and wrestle with the freestyle Greco. What are we looking at this year for the guys, and how are you keeping them engaged?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was, I think I was as excited as anybody after our season. It's been a long time since Makoka has had somebody on the podium. Probably even longer time since we've had somebody in the finals. And I really felt like, even though we had 2 guys that had a lot of individual success, our team really started to kind of buy into the sport, really started to, I'd say fall in love with the sport. We had even some younger guys who, you probably didn't read about in the paper, but we had a lot of guys that kind of started to come into their own at some point in the season. And I felt like, as much as it was going to hurt to lose Abe and Taven and some of our other seniors, we had some great momentum built going into the off season. And then to feel like COVID kind of took that away was frustrating. I know we had a handful of guys that were like just chomping at the bit to do freestyle and Greco. And we'd even had some open mats kind of after the season, just kind of give some guys some lead into that. You just had Abe kind of, because Abe probably knows a lot more about that stuff than I do, but just had Abe kind of lead him through that stuff. And once COVID hit, I think the thing that's probably most frustrating for everybody was just the unknown of it all. Like, well, okay, how long is it going to last? Are we going to get back on the mat? When are we going to get back on the mat? And now that, it's pretty much taken away that Greco freestyle season. I didn't, like I said, I didn't really try to hammer our kids with stuff. I'd occasionally send out like maybe a motivational quote. I work in the weight room during the spring and summer anyway, so I was kind of sending out some workout stuff that guys can do at home. But I think wrestlers are kind of a unique group in that I think they always know what they need to be doing. Like they know that they can do push-ups, sit-ups, run, pull-ups, sprints. You need like maybe a 3x3 foot area to do shadow wrestling. So I didn't really overload them with that stuff. I just was hopeful that we would carry some of that momentum over, and I never really knew when we were going to be able to get back on the mat, but I know just in conversation with guys, they're really excited for whenever that time comes that we're able to get back on the mat.
That's great. And to add on to a little piece you were talking about, Taven and Abe, excellent season for 2 of your wrestlers. Also, the first team I think that I've ever seen before the semifinals playing spike ball out there in the mats.
Oh, we always joke. We don't actually want to get to Wells to wrestle. We just want to play spike ball out there because that's about the only time you're going to find that many mats rolled out in one area.
That was awesome. We had our whole duet contingency cheering you guys on, and we're like, what are they? Oh, they're playing spike. I go, they always do that. It's the ritual. So.
Well, and as a coach, to be honest, this year I actually did get a little worried because, you wrestle out there until Saturday. I mean, that's a lot of intense matches. I mean, it's not like a normal tournament where, you're maybe going to walk through your first match and then you're going to wait a little bit and maybe have another tough match or two. I mean, it's do or die out there. And, every match you got to wrestle like your last one. And so towards the end, I know physically I was feeling it. Maybe that's warming up Taven every day, taking its toll on me. But no, I liked our approach out there. I think spike ball's a way for our guys to stay relaxed and not let the moment get too big because really it shouldn't be. It's just wrestling at the end of the day. It's just you toeing the line, other guy toeing the line, and putting 6 minutes out there and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Who's the best spike ball player?
I'm going to have to say myself. I mean, I probably shouldn't, but if we're going to say not coaches, I don't know. That's tough. Everybody has like their own unique strengths and skills. Taven's just massive. I mean, he could probably, if you figure it's a 360-degree playing area as big as he is, he can probably cover 370 degrees of it. Abe just does some like funky stuff when he serves, and he's always looking up goofy stuff on spike ball to try to make you miss or to confuse you. But yeah, I don't know if I can pick one. I think whoever I pick against is probably going to want to fight me. So I'm going to have to decline answering that.
Sure. It's pretty competitive, I'm sure. So, Coach, thinking about your time as an athlete, whether it's wrestling, football, basketball, who would you say was your most influential coach and why?
Most influential coach. It's tough because I think I'm really fortunate, and this is probably why I really push it on kids. I played so many sports. One day I sat down and I made like a list of all the coaches I've had, and I think I've had probably over 30 or 40 coaches. And if nothing else, I think you learn even from the bad coaches or the coaches that you maybe didn't like. Especially me as a coach now, I know I learned ways to do things, ways not to do things. But I would say probably my favorite coach would be my mom, because I think just her work ethic, I think, has probably guided me in everything that I've done. And I was in kind of a unique situation. My dad's a little older than probably most kids my age. So a lot of times it was like my mom in the backyard playing catch with me, even though I'm sure it hurt her hand, or it was the last thing she wanted to do after she'd already put in 18 hours. But I would say it's probably her, just for the non-sport specific stuff that she taught me.
Eric Juergens was one of our first interviews where we had. And it's funny and interesting. You said almost identical same thing that he did. He said his heroes, the people he looked up to, were the hard blue-collar workers, just the guys out in the field, the people, throwing the hay, the small mechanic in town. It's just a way of life, he said, out there. And it's your heroes aren't always going to be these, Dan Gable or whoever else. It can be your neighbor. And I think that's a great answer.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of great coaches too. Like, I think one of the coolest things about coaching this year was I was able to talk Coach T into coming back. And, I know he was probably a little hesitant, just because I think it's hard to figure out what your role is at that point. But, he's an awesome mentor. Doc's awesome to have. I didn't have Doc as a coach, but in some ways I feel like he's been coaching me, while I've been head coach, just because he's gone through the ropes himself as a head coach. And, really anybody I've ever had, I've gained something from. So, while my mom's probably my biggest hero or the person I've learned the most from. I've gained something from everybody I've ever had. So I'm thankful to all of them.
So that's official. Coach T's coming out of retirement?
Well, I think he actually took the shoes off and left them in the middle of the mat last year. So I just was glad that I got him for even 1 year, because I knew it. I went and talked to him before the season. I was like, I know you probably don't want to, but I'd really appreciate it if you just, kind of show me the ropes a little bit this year. And he did. So, that's all I get from him. That's more than I could have ever asked for.
Good opportunity. Great opportunity. So, Coach, you specialize as a strength and conditioning coach for your football team, and it helps out in your wrestling team. But do you have special workouts or different workouts that you have for your wrestling team versus the average athlete that goes through Makoka?
I probably have some slight variations, that maybe we do in season, like. 2 days a week, we do like what I'd call more of a normal lift, like probably what I'm going to put through any other kid that's playing any other sport. But then Fridays, we'd kind of mix it up, especially at the beginning of the season. We might do like a plate workout, or we might do jump rope workout, or, something just to try to mix it up. And I would say most of the time those would be a little more wrestling specific, but I probably have a different approach in that I want our kids to play as many sports as possible, because I think the parallels and the tools that you can transition from one sport to the other. I mean, there's so many of them. I think if you look closely, it's almost unbelievable. So I really don't harp too much on, doing a sport specific lift or anything in season. I just kind of want our kids to be strong and fast and confident.
I know Abe's got to be your poster child for bodybuilders, or one of them up there, huh?
Well, if you saw how much time that guy spent doing bis and tris workouts, you'd just be in disbelief. You'd be like, there's not enough hours in the day to do that many curls, but somehow he finds a way. He's always, whenever I see him, he's like, oh, you should see this bicep or this tricep workout I found. And I was like, yeah, I never really lose motivation in doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's a guy that loves the weight room. I mean, I think he's a lot like me in that sense, where if he could live in the weight room, he would, roll out a cot, we'll sleep there.
Knocking out curls for the girls. I know he's strong too, so probably more, but yeah, definitely some curls. If you could think about an obstacle, what would be the biggest obstacle you have had to overcome as either like a wrestler or a coach?
I would say as a coach, for me, it's feeling like I don't have the knowledge or the experience. I think wrestling is really unique in that I think most people that are associated with the sport, like they eat, sleep, drink, love wrestling. Like it's far and away their sport of choice. I mean, they know the technique, they know the ins and outs, regardless of how successful they were. And I think especially with my backstory, that's one thing I kind of combat as a coach is, like, do I know enough? Can I successfully prepare our kids to take the mat? And I think this year especially, I felt pretty well set up for success this year. I think just knowing what we returned, I mean, it was the first time in a long time we'd returned some guys who'd made it to the state tournament the year before. Part of me had the attitude, like, just don't screw this up, like you've got a Ferrari, just put the keys in and drive. So I battled that a little bit, but at the same time, I think I was very open with the guys, hey, I've not wrestled in college. I've never won a state championship, never won a national championship, but I'm right here along with you. I'm going to be learning every step of the way. I guarantee I'm going to make some mistakes, but I'm going to try my best. And I just ask that you do the same. And, I think they appreciated that. And I think we grew together. And I think that's probably why this season meant so much to me. I felt like as a whole, we grew a lot and we had a lot of success because of it.
I would say, Colton, I like everything you just said. What a couple of key takeaways for me is you didn't try to tell them stuff you don't. You're not going to BS them. You're open and honest about it. But the other thing you didn't say, but I can see, I observed this, is you care, and the guys know you care. And a coach, whether they know everything or not, if they're going to come in with passion and be really genuine and care about the kids, I think the kids are going to buy in. I'm pretty confident that probably played a lot to do with in the success you've got there right now.
Well, and even practice, and I think wrestling is unlike any other sport, and that I think as a coach, like, it's so much more hands-on than any other sport. You know, even coaching football, like, I'm going to demonstrate a drill, but like with wrestling, and I think this is why, like, you see those old guys like Doc that are still 70 years old in wrestling. I mean, it's like wrestling's the glue that holds your body together. You know, it's like that fabric that's just weaved throughout your life. But I mean, wrestling's awesome because you get to be on the mat with the kids every day. You know, like, to me, that is how you earn that credibility. That's how you earn respect. Like, you're going to go through everything they're going to go through. It's not like I'm sitting in the corner on a chair like, hey, do this, do that. You know, like, if we run, I'm going to run with them. You know, I try not to wrestle as much as I did maybe in the past, just because from a head coaching perspective, I want to watch a little more. But, you know, I'm not some, 500-pound guy that just coaches the sport because I love it. I'm trying to stay in shape and constantly learning and, trying to grow myself as a wrestler, so that way I can be a better coach for them.
So, Coach, you touched on a little bit of this past season, how well you did, and how things went. Can you just kind of polish up? Let us know how did this past season go? I mean, we had two exceptional wrestlers you did with Abe and Tavian, but other kids who had a great season. And then going into next year, who's gonna be a couple of your leaders that we're going to be looking for on the boards?
I touched on this a little bit earlier, but those guys are easy to pick out. I think just because anytime you're on the podium at the end of the year, that's obviously to your ability, your accomplishments throughout the year. But I think we felt like that that was kind of the expectation for those guys, and I think they'd probably agree. But I think when we started the year, we were like, we've got two kids that can be in the finals and can win it all. And things didn't necessarily shake out like that. I still believe that. I look at Abe. Jax Flynn wins 2A at 170, and Abe beats him 3 times this year. It's just sometimes that's how the bracket shakes out. That's the beauty of wrestling, is you only need to do it one time, right? You need to do it when it matters, and sometimes it doesn't go the way you want it to. I think same thing with Taven. Taven was winning all but like maybe 30 seconds of that match, and you make a mistake at the wrong time, and that's the difference between being on the top of the podium and not being there. But I think some of our biggest achievements this year, I don't know the last time we beat Solon, but we had a pretty crazy duel with them at DeWitt. It came down to like the last match, and we had a senior kid who was one of those basketball wrestling converts, Liam Onen. Wrestled as a sophomore for the first time. I think, maybe only had like 10 wins. Last year we saw a lot of growth, and then this year really kind of came into his own. And for it to come down to a match like that, I think that's kind of what it's all about for a kid like that. Kind of validates your switch and the time that you put into the sport. We had our 220-pounder, Achilles, we call him Dixie Solomon, was a kid who's been a great practice partner for pretty much everybody in the room. We called him Coach Solomon for a while because he would do whatever you'd want. Like, hey, we need you to come with this tournament, warm this kid up. Never could crack the varsity lineup, obviously, with Taven there. He took him until after Christmas break, but this is a kid who basically waited 4 years to crack the varsity lineup, and he finally got down to 220 and put together a heck of a year. Didn't make the state like we probably would have liked, but, just that he could even get in the varsity lineup, that was awesome. Had a couple young guys that I think really stepped up. Ivan Martin, who was the sophomore this year, spent a lot of time in the lineup last year. Really felt like wrestled his best at the end of the year this year. Was that kind of a tough weight, so maybe didn't play out the way we wanted it to. And then Lane Stender would be another one. Started the year at 220 for us. put together a really good season. We really thought, okay, he's going to have to beat either Wyatt Volker or the Mid-Prairie kid. We kind of like that, actually. And he had I call it a gas match against the Mid-Prairie kid. It's kind of who's got the most left in the tank. And I was on the wrong side of that one, but, it gives us a lot to look forward to next year. I don't think we'll have maybe the firepower that we had with, the big guns that you can kind of always count on. But I think overall we'll be a very good lineup next year.
And you had mentioned about that big win over Solon. And I was there. I was lucky enough to watch that match. Oh, my goodness. That was crazy. The crowd went nuts because I think Solon was ranked like 6th at that time in the state, right?
Yeah, well, and I think actually my favorite part might be, I think it was like one of the last duels before Christmas break, and we always do like an ugly sweater night. And Doc and I have the same, it's like a breakdancing Santa that lights up, ugly sweater, and we were both wearing that. And there's like a picture of us celebrating. So, yeah, that was a great moment. I think you appreciate that stuff that much more because it's a team thing. The state accomplishments, that's awesome. You're happy for those kids. But, that was just a great team win. And it was, there was a lot of people there, a great environment for it to happen. And yeah, to beat Solon when they were ranked, that was just kind of the cherry on top.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, Coach, we are to our OT sudden death questions. The first one is, what's your favorite wrestling movie?
I think you have to go with Vision Quest, don't you?
It's a good one. It's a classic.
Just don't have enough blood time. Favorite superhero?
If you were stalking me like you said you were, you probably know this already, but I'm going to have to go with Thor because believe it or not, in college I did grow my hair out. It was down past the shoulders. Before the Conor McGregor jokes, it was Thor. So I'll go with Thor.
Nice. Chocolate or vanilla ice cream?
Ooh, that's tough. I don't know. I think I'm going to have to go with vanilla.
Favorite wrestling match of all time?
I think the Mark Ironside Kerry Cole ad is one of my favorites. Although I've been watching a lot of like Jordan Burroughs, Kyle Dake lately, and their series of matches. I guess if there's a series of matches, I'm gonna have to pick that'd be those guys. But just one, I'm gonna have to go Ironside Kerry Cole ad.
Hey, Rob, didn't you mention that's out tonight on Flow?
Yeah.
What was that again?
Bad Blood.
Yes. It's probably going to be about when we wrap up here. I bet it might be on about that time.
I'm going to have to tune in. I've been looking forward to it, especially after that interview that those guys had. There is some bad blood between those two. I do believe that.
Yes, sir. That was pretty interesting. Kyle Dake gets younger every day. I thought that was kind of
apparently. Yeah, he's defying the aging process somehow.
Who are you picking out for that winner? Who's going to be representing the Olympics that way?
Part of me does feel like Dake. I look into like the training aspect of stuff too, and I know Kyle Dake is doing some more progressive stuff, some unique training. But I think until you beat the man, it's hard to pick against him. So I'm gonna have to go Burroughs.
May depend on what your answer is. Tie into the very next question is who's the greatest U.S. Olympic wrestler of all time?
I haven't paid a ton of attention to it, but I'm going to have to go with Rulon Gardner just because I feel like, the match that he had was probably maybe the biggest underdog story of all time. So I'm going to ride that one, even though it's probably an unconventional one.
I love that one. Beating Karelin. That's a big one.
All right, Coach. Favorite food, and while we're at it, looks like everything's opening up again. Plug one of your local restaurants where Rob and I should go eat when we come visit up by Maquoketa.
Ooh, favorite food. We're talking desserts or main dishes or
anything. If you get your choice right now for someone to run food to you.
I'm going to have to pick my mom. Anything that she makes. That's probably why I was fat when I was little. But she owns a bakery here in Makoka that's called America's Pride. A couple weeks ago, she made like a cookie dough cupcake. I mean, I felt myself gain 5 pounds, and that was just one cupcake. So I'll plug her, America's Pride, her bake shop. Pride. So
it's right in town in Maquoketa?
Yep, right in town.
All right, I may head up there on my next days off visit. So that sounds good to me.
Better wear pants with an elastic waistband. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Next question is I'm gonna give you 4 possibilities. All right. U.S. Olympics coming up. What wrestler will be representing us at 57 kilograms in the 2021 Olympics? You got Gilman, Fix, Gross, and Spencer Lee.
I'm gonna have to go with Spencer Lee. That guy's a hammer. It kind of, I don't know, gives me the willies to watch him wrestle because I know he's just a little guy, but man, it's just not fun for those other guys that wrestle him. That's a serious ride on the pain train.
Yeah.
I like that answer. I think Spencer would be my answer as well.
Well, he hasn't really focused on it either, you know, and I think that's the craziest part. Like, you're splitting your time between folk style and freestyle, which obviously there's a lot of carryover, but the nuances are there. And man, just to think if he could focus on that full time, that's scary.
Yeah, totally agree. Favorite football team?
Denver Broncos.
I think you gave us this answer already, but favorite vacation destination?
Although I do go to Jamaica a lot, I think some of my favorite childhood memories come from going out west, you know, like Colorado, Utah, Wyoming. It's pretty hard to beat sunset on the mountains.
Colton, we like to end on this question. What is your favorite quote?
Favorite quote? I knew this was coming, and I looked up some. I have like some different sayings that I write down. I think as a coach, everybody's got like a catalog of quotes, but I don't know if this is exact or not, which is probably bad, but excellence is not an act, but a habit. We always talk through with our guys, talk about like stacking W's. And when I say stacking W's, it means like stacking wins in all the different areas of your life. So whether it's like it's with your family, it's school, your job, wrestling, whatever it might be, that's just something I try to live my life by. You know, whenever I do something, I want to be the best at it. And I think to give anything less than your best effort is an injustice to yourself and to everybody else. So
incredible. All right, Coach. Well, I really appreciate your time. That wraps us up for today. Best of luck to the Maquoketa Cardinals football season as well as wrestling season. We look forward to seeing you guys opposite corner again. So you guys take care up there, all right?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Please share this podcast with your friends. Give us a like and a follow on Facebook and Twitter at QCA Wrestle. And keep an eye out for more QCA wrestling content coming soon.